Welcome back, Red Spotters, to the show here on Red Spotlight Entertainment. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, and I am joined by Alexis Moreno, the only person who gave a damn to show up today. How are you doing, Alexis?
I am good.
It's been a little interesting this week because we've been doing a good job of getting people, our whole team, to be on a lot of these shows, but this week has been a bitch to organize. I'm just going to be honest with you. With work schedules getting a little bit more in the way, with Kyle still being an essential worker, seemingly on end, it seems like. So yeah, we're doing the order of the recording anyway. The recording of these shows differently because we usually do 3 days a week. And it just so happens that this week we're transitioning to 4 days a week, so that's going to be lovely. For this is episode 235. Wow. And this is going to be a follow-up to our previous episode regarding Black Lives Matter, but with a little bit more cinema. In this case, we have reviews by two wonderful films. Well, one is considered a miniseries, but I think of it as a really, really long movie because it is at least presented that way, by Ava DuVernay, her documentary film 13th, and her drama series or drama film When They See Us, both, of course, on Netflix. Alexis Moreno went out of her way to watch these, and I had heard of these projects in the past, but never really seen them. So we saw them. One is that's what happened. We saw them. One's from 2016. The other is from 2019. And so the bulk of this episode will be talking about those films at length. What we took away from them. I think I'll just say it right now. Even though they're not going to be projects from 2020, they are quite easily the best thing I've seen all year. Mm-hmm. Easily. And perhaps in years. Amazing craft work here. Yeah. We'll get into those for sure. And of course, it does go a long way in relating to the previous installment when we talked about Black Lives Matter and our support for the protests, and also why we felt the need to discuss them and how deeply they affected us in that way. So it's a nice little through line to talk about films that are in relation to that. But before we get into that, I do want to have a little bit of a rapport here with Alexis and kind of discuss how we thought that conversation went, whether there were some things that we didn't get to say, or maybe we stressed too much on certain things. Like, how do you feel overall the conversation went, at least for you anyway?
I think it went fine. Everything that I felt or wanted to say was said, whether it was by me or by one of you guys. So yeah, I mean, it was like a good release, I guess.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, we needed to say a lot of those things.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was like part therapy, part just getting the information out there.
I feel like every podcast we do, that's why there's a little bit of a through line in all of the shows that we do. And I've had this talking about it with Peter, is kind of the only reason we do this is because we just need to get our thoughts out there. We just need to let it out. Mm-hmm. Either when we're angry, when we're happy about something. It's nice to get the message across and and feel like you're being heard, like that. Yeah, I thought it went really well. The only thing that I do regret not talking about a little bit more, and I was thinking about this the last few days, because I went back and I heard it again just to make sure that it was okay. And I wasn't sure, something that I introduced into the conversation, I'm not sure if it was necessarily segued all that well into it. And I want to clarify a couple of things that I said, because I don't believe I did a good enough job of talking about that whole part of the episode where I brought in the Sanders campaign, right? When I talked about Bernie Sanders. And when I did that, I did it not to undermine the movement that's going on right now or the protesters. I think I clarified, or at least I should have clarified, that there was a distinction between that and that it's not because of Bernie Sanders. What I meant to suggest is that a lot of the rage and a lot of the disappointment in our institutions right now, part of it stems from the fact that he ran 2 times as a candidate with a message that seemingly is appropriate with what people want right now, the kind of change that they want. And 2 times, at least my impression is the apparatus of the Democratic Party prevented him from winning. Now, that sounds a little hyperbolic for people who I think a lot of people would hear that and they would say, well, are you saying that the Democratic Party stuffed the ballot box and rigged it, literally rigged the election? It's no, that's not what I'm saying.
They just played
I'm saying
politics.
The influence. Yes, the influence of the Democratic Party, especially on older Democratic voters who are the base, who always vote. And of course, the fact that their allies and the corporate media go along with it help to manipulate the older Democratic voters into voting for who they think should be the person who has the best chance at winning. And it's even more frustrating when you see numbers that are out, even today, that show Trump down 14, 15 points in every single poll. And it's gee, if Biden could do that, imagine how much better Bernie would be. At a lead, And to me, why I brought that up is because as an individual, that plays into my frustrations with the system in general. And it's not, and it shouldn't be counted, I feel, as a conspiracy theory. If you are someone out there that thought that I was just saying shit and it didn't come out of nowhere, I did recommend the Vice News documentary, The Bernie Blackout, and it'll show you how the corporate media at every turn undercut Bernie Sanders, his message, and his performance with voters. Also, to be fair here, I will say that older Democratic voters just didn't want that kind of fundamental change. We, as a younger generation, want that fundamental change. And in all seriousness, we didn't come out in anywhere near as big as numbers as the older Democratic voters did. So that played into it as well. Bernie Sanders' inability to appeal to African Americans overall, lackluster, underwhelming, disappointing, and that played into his downfall as well. So it's not just the Democrats were hey, let's all end up behind Biden and that's what it is. But that was a big moment. And that changed the course of that election. And it didn't help that coronavirus was a thing that was beginning to catch steam, and the campaign ended just like that. There were no more events. There were no more rallies. It was just stopped. It was a perfect storm that happened. And a lot of what's going to happen this election should worry a lot of people, especially Democrats, because older people are going to be the only ones that are going to come out and vote, and Biden will win most likely. But what does it say that the Democrats going to win without the support of young people, progressives, Latinos? I mean, a lot of those groups are so disappointed, disheartened right now that they're not going to vote. And you know what the saddest thing about that is? It may not even be it may not even matter. It may not even matter overall. And as a voter, it's more than just, oh, my guy lost. It's the fact that the party interfered with the election and told me no. And I strongly felt, and many people strongly felt, that the proposals that Bernie Sanders had went a long way in addressing the frustration and the anger that is happening right now. And again, it's not just, I say this not to minimize, but also not to forget this. The anger right now is in honor of George Floyd and, the disgusting police brutality and display that needs to end. And I felt that we made that message across. But what we were also saying is that the anger and frustration and the rage going on right now is not just because of what that one thing or that one issue. It's all of these issues that no one is addressing. And let me just say, as somebody who has been a lifelong Democrat, who has voted for Democrats his entire life, this last week has been the perfect example of why I don't consider people like Nancy Pelosi or Muriel Bowser or Kamala Harris as people who actually can affect change. All they did was pull stunts like kneel in the Capitol for like 5 minutes. And then Muriel Bowser, she renamed a street in DC after Black Lives Matter. And yeah, that's all nice. And, it's nice trolling, but like, is that really all that we're supposed to be expecting from them? No serious proposals on how to change police brutality or policing, or how to redirect the funding of certain, the over-militarization of policing. That's not been discussed. Biden, I think, had some modest proposals, but you know what he suggested? Literally what he suggested was that scene from episode 1, The Phantom Menace, where Padme Amidala is in front of the Chancellor Valorum, and she tells them, hey, assholes, my planet is being invaded by a bunch of like bureaucratic nutwings. Can you come and can you get them to leave because they're going to kill my people? And the Chancellor says, will you allow us to appoint a committee to determine the validity of your claims? And what Biden said is that one of the things he'll do is to establish a committee to look into reforming the police. And it's like, yeah, that ain't gonna do shit. Yeah, that's really the best you got is forming a committee? I'm sorry, I don't find that anywhere near sufficient at all. This is why I didn't want him to be the nominee, or why I'm tired of people like Nancy Pelosi. These are people who are in their like 70s and 80s. And it's like, gee, when are you going to like grow a spine? Yeah. When are you going to actually do something about it? Where are you with the messaging? Even the messaging you can't even do. It took Pelosi like weeks just to kneel? Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yas Queen. Yeah, sure. That's exactly what we expected you, right? It's just the superficial, substance-free moves that makes me so frustrated with them.
Yeah. No, that kneeling thing with the picture, you just can't help but laugh.
Because it's stupid.
Somebody wrote like, okay, that's cool and all, but like, can you do your job?
Right? I mean, it seems like they can't. Or maybe it's a little bit more sinister than that, and that, of course, is they get a lot of donations from people who are friends with the cops. And, of course, they can't seriously impose a danger to them. Otherwise, well, then they'd go and they'd have to kiss that poor banker money goodbye. And God forbid that ever happened, right? And then you think to yourself why it is that people don't care about the election. You know what? I understand a little bit more why people just don't care about anything. And at the same time, man, were we right about Trump and how bad he would be.
Mm-hmm. You know, I hear people like saying, you know, why are Democrats like still crying over him winning and blah blah. And it's like, that's not it. It's just he keeps proving us right in why we didn't want him there in the first place. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or why people in general didn't want him there in the first place. Like, he just keeps doing these things, and it's like, dude, what is wrong with you?
Well, I mean, the same people who say that, I would say two things. So, first of all, you're saying, oh, so you don't think people should be crying at the fact that Trump is responsible for the deaths of 110,000 American citizens because of his handling of coronavirus? Which, by the way, I should mention, yeah, we crossed 110,000 deaths. a few days ago, actually. And the cases are spiking. I don't know if you've seen the headlines, people, but they're spiking everywhere.
I live in Arizona. Arizona's been being talked about right now. So, for many reasons, but, yeah, it's...
Yeah. And then on top of that, I would also say to those people, so why do you think you get any kind of say in like who gets to cry over an election? You people were literally crying, kicking, and screaming for 8 years because a black man got elected. Hello? Are we just going to forget that? Like, how many times, like, oh, well, Obama or Obama this and Obama that. It's the same thing.
They're still crying about it.
You're still crying about it. So it's like, go fuck yourself if you think that. Like, why are you crying over Trump? Because he's a piece of shit. He's a piece of shit who, by the way, is a criminal. At least we not forget he was impeached earlier this year. And he was only impeached on, like, one of the crimes that he committed. Mm-hmm. There was no other investigations of any of the other crimes. It's also a crime to literally throw tear gas at peaceful protesters taking a shit on the First Amendment, by the way. Inciting violence left and right with when the looting starts, the shooting starts. It's the people who feel right now that Trump is being treated unfairly are the same kind of people who are so mentally repressed or devolved that they can't understand that when Donald Trump suggested that perhaps if we ingested disinfectants that could help the immune system fight coronavirus, they think that he was being sarcastic when he said that. And if you watch the tape, that's not the case. Yeah, I almost don't even know how to deal with Trumpers at this point. Like, because I do a lot of like political, mostly COVID, social media posting. I've just kind of blocked a lot of people who have commented. I don't even bother. I think engaging in political debate on platforms like Facebook and Twitter are a waste of time. They're a waste of time because people are not going to. It's not really set up to be where people can discuss ideas or have a straightforward argument or, a debate. Mm-hmm. It's mainly for show, for people to like one up each other. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, so I that's not my preferred way of engaging with people. And for Trumpers, I just think they're a lost cause. They've been radicalized either by Fox News or by their upbringing. They are already from a very extreme neo-fascist point of view, so there's just no point. If you think that it's not that it's okay to throw weapons at peaceful protesters, then you're not a constitutionalist, first and foremost. Unless it involves your guns, then of course, yeah, go ahead, shoot whoever you want, right? So, yeah, it's just a bunch of nonsense, and it why aren't more people, it just makes me so angry that more people, and especially the Democrats, why weren't they more aggressive in like quashing the anti-lockdown protesters? Because those were dangerous. It's a different situation. That was just legitimately all because they wanted the economy to reopen. And of course, and there is something that should be said about, the differences in like how white people kind of get what they want and black people never get what they want, because like it took like not even 3 weeks for those anti-lockdown protesters to literally take the entire country down with them and convince every governor to start reopening. Mm-hmm. It was that quick. And at no point were those protesters ever fired on or dismissed. And yeah, and this whole COVID situation is, we might not be talking about it en masse in today's podcast, but it's not gone away.
Nope.
It's there. But as far as like the conversation last week, I thought it went really well. I thought that we, got our point across, and we're just trying to be fair. We're not really, saying anything that is intended to, I think, enrage people. It's more of just like trying to listen and for us to get our feelings out there, because it was a pretty heavy week. How was this last week for you, though?
I mean, this last week was kind of rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things happened. But, I mean, it's fine.
It's fine. We're fine. You know, everything's just burning down, but we're fine. So we'll be updating you as it goes along, and we'll have more shows in the week that'll go further into this and how it affects the movies. But for today, we'll be discussing Ava DuVernay and her films that speak greatly to the relevant issues going on right now. It's almost, you could almost say that they were made last week and they were released right now. That's how urgent it feels, how relevant it feels to where it is right now. And we should also talk about, our familiarity with Ava DuVernay. I can't say that I've seen much of her work except for one film of hers that I really loved, and that was Selma from a few years back. I think it was 2014 it came out. Selma, which starred David Oyelowo, and it was kind of like a Lincoln-esque biopic on Martin Luther King Jr. The film was great. And then after that, all I know from Ava is just from what I've read in the headlines of her being, at one point she was in the running to direct Black Panther. That didn't happen. And then she directed A Wrinkle in Time instead, which we covered that film not in the sense that we actually watched it. We kind of just took shots at it and covered the disaster that it was. That was its box office performance and the fact that nobody was at all interested in that movie. And it wasn't reviewed all that well either. Did you ever watch that movie?
Yeah, I saw it.
Is that the kindest thing you can say, is that you saw it?
The only reason I saw it is because I was there for D23 when she came out and they did a whole thing for the movie. That was literally the only reason why I went to go see it, because I saw the trailer. I didn't know what the heck was going on. It's a book, right? I've never... Yeah. Honestly, I'd never heard of, that ever before.
Right.
And, yeah. And then I came out and still don't know what the heck it was really about. So, yeah.
That says a lot. And that was a troubled production, from what I've read, and of course that situation was bad. But now, there were some other films that she had made during, I think, those years that, I was familiar with the documentary 13th, and I had been meaning to talk about it. I had been meaning to watch the film, but I never really did in large. I think there was one, event that I was involved in, and they were screening the movie, but I was, not really watching it. I think I had other things to do, so I left. But I was aware of the movie 13th, and what it was about, and of course, its awards recognition at the Academy. Mm-hmm. I think it was nominated for Best Documentary Feature, or it could be it was nominated for Best Song, or both. I don't remember. It was years ago at this point. And then When They See Us, I don't think it got recognized anywhere. I don't know if it
I never heard of both, so.
Yeah, I don't even know if I don't even know around what time When They See Us was dropped on Netflix. I know it was last year in 2019, but yeah. I will say though, this speaks to, there's a lot of things in common that When They See Us, 13th, and Selma have in common. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate very much that we have a filmmaker, especially of the caliber of Ava DuVernay, who is devoted to telling these stories. These stories that, I'm just going to put it real with you, anyone who's black, anyone who's not black, let me be clear about that, needs to see.
Yeah.
Because you don't know. And what she says in all of these films is, you don't even know what we've been through.
Yeah.
What, they have been through as a community. And as somebody who has seen Selma, I think that would be a wonderful companion piece with what we're talking about, Alexis, if you ever want to see that movie. The same way that I appreciate other filmmakers like Spielberg, who Spielberg in the last decade went out of his way to tell other stories that were historical in nature, but they were grounded in kind of obscurities. These were stories that nobody really knew that much about, but they all feature different people who are hell-bent on doing the right thing when everyone around them is trying to force them to do the wrong thing. So, yeah, I'm just grateful that she's around and that she's making movies on these topics, especially since, and I don't think it was her intention when she was making it to be as relevant as it is now at this moment, although, as her films do say, it's an ever-going thing. This never really ended.
Yeah.
And then we'll go ahead and begin with 13th. In 13th, there's a documentary film, and it begins with the premise. It is titled after our 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. The 13th Amendment, by the way, which was a central part of Steven Spielberg film's Lincoln, which I believe you also are you're aware of and you like that movie. And it's actually it's kind of a depressing prequel to 13th in a way because that movie is so momentous with finally getting the amendment passed that freed the slaves back in the 1860s, and then 13th picks up right after that, and then it's 150 years of shit that followed immediately there throughout. And that was because in the 13th Amendment, which did abolish slavery, unless, of course, the loophole that people are not as familiar with, unless you are arrested or indicted or incarcerated or convicted of a crime, is the right words for it, then you are a slave again. And it should say something about the persistence of racists throughout all of time to never let the law get in their way of committing acts of terror. And that's how I choose to characterize it, because that's, I think, how it should be characterized, because the second that that amendment was passed, which of course we literally went to war. That was what the Civil War was about, because people didn't want to give up their property-owned people.
Yep.
And when they read that amendment, they were like, well, you know what? It actually ain't a death knell for us, because now we can make up some more bullshit. The thing with 13th is you're seeing that from the 1860s all the way now to the 2020s, it's the same story. We pass a milestone, and then the same racist white people. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying that all white people are racist. I'm not even saying that all Southerners are racist. I'm just saying that the same kind of people continue to create new things. Well, actually, no. They create new names for the same thing.
Which is something that they mention in the movie, that
right.
It's just the evolution of what was there before.
Right.
Which is, it may not be worse, but it's not better.
Yeah, and that is, there's a lot of history that this goes through. And I want to say, before we get into the details of it, from a film perspective, this is kind of if I ever get to be in a position of making another documentary again, and a full feature-length documentary, this is what I would use as reference, because this is how you do it. She went through 150 years of American history in a little under 2 hours, or maybe it was a little under 2.5 hours at that. It was concise in the way that she said everything that needed to be said for this story, and she went through it with a great pace. It wasn't don't think that it's throwing all of these facts at at your face and then it just like rushes like into the next thing. No, it gives you the facts. It tells you what happened. And then with her interviewees, they provide more commentary for what it meant and for how it led to the next thing. And it happens at just the perfect pace. It's impressive how much history she went through. And I hope it's being used in some curriculums, but this is something that needs to be, in my view, mandatory viewing, not just for, if you're a fan of movies or a fan of documentaries. I think if you're an individual right now who takes great offense to these protests and who may be enraged by me even saying that some white people are racist, I think it's incumbent upon you to watch this just so you can understand and maybe begin to empathize with what they're going through. And furthermore, I feel it's something that's mandatory for schools. Yeah, this should be, and I know it's graphic. Some of the stuff that we're seeing, because we see faces that are completely torn apart in this.
There was the reason why I watched it was because obviously of like everything that was going on, but I asked my cousin on like advice on what I should say or how I should bring up these issues to my parents, which is like a big conversation that's happening right now too, like people who want their families to understand what's happening and just like make them realize like this isn't just like a thing that happened right now, like this is a thing that's been building up for years and years and years, and like this is why this is happening type of thing. And she's the one that told me you should watch this this documentary because it gives you a lot of good information. It just kind of lays it all out for you like perfectly.
Right.
And so watching it, I didn't know a lot of these things, which brings me to like the school thing. Our education system is like messed up. Like so bad. And like literally like the fact that like my highest education was high school, and the fact that you don't
so far,
yes. Like
I'm currently going to school,
but like I haven't been taking like that many classes, whatever. Like the fact that like this is not mentioned at all, like, is insane.
A lot of this was left out, right?
Yeah. And it just like, I mean, I know it's kind of like going off on like the subject, but just like this issue is not presented to us, which, can lead to other issues, which later on can lead to people, realizing like, hey, we need change here for people of different kinds of races, just different people in general, like, because we all live here, not just one certain. I don't know. It's just, it's crazy.
Let me just tell you this. So much of what you just said really, speaks to me per se, because history was always my favorite subject. It was always my favorite because I was always just fascinated with the behavior of human beings. And
that's like weird too, because it was mine too. When I was in high school and still today, I always said if I wasn't adamant into pursuing what I want to do, my like second option would be to be like a history teacher or something. Yeah. And like, you know what I mean? So it's like weird. I don't know.
I've always found it remarkable how little people, first of all, don't know about history and don't care. And I mean, I guess I shouldn't expect in particular a bunch of high school aged kids to realize the gravity of these stories that's being told to them. But I think everyone at one point in their lives realizes that as a society, we would be better serviced if we studied the past and not repeat the patterns that we see throughout all of history. I've never forgotten this. We both went to the same high school, first and foremost, both Alexis and I, and we both had the same teacher. And I'll never forget what he said in class, and that is the single most important word in the history of mankind is tolerance. Because intolerance, the inability to accept a different group's, well, that's the word, differences, has been what has sparked every single international warfare. Any kind of battle, war, all of that hatred, all of that destruction has come from the inability to show or have compassion, to focus on the things that makes us the same instead of the things that makes us different. And that's always stuck with me. And you're right, a lot of this was just gone from even his great history class. It just wasn't on the curriculum. And, you know, where you and I differ in terms of like what we've been exposed to, I have been, ever since high school, gone higher and higher with, you know, the education that I've been exposed with. And then a lot of the information that 13th has on display, I had already come across. And don't get me wrong, it's not like it was in 13th where like, oh, there's just one class and then it tells you all these different things. No, all of these different eras that are explored in the movie, I learned from different classes. Like my major was political science. So, and like, for example, I took a class on the Voting Rights Act, which went through all of the history of that. And a lot of that does play into 13th. Yeah. And there were other political science classes. So like I had been exposed to a lot of this, and like, to me, this is why I feel like films like 13th are necessary for people to watch, because it's damning about what it says about us as a country and as a people. And the feeling that this leaves you with is the feeling that I was shaken watching it, and I knew this shit already. But I can't imagine it for you. Like, how much of this information, from a percentage standpoint, did you not know?
Most of it. Like, if not all. Like, well, no, I knew the general sense of the things that it was trying to tell us. Right. But just, like, pinpointing what led to it, that's what I just, like, didn't know.
It's a lot about connecting the dots, which I wish more historians and more history teachers would do. Like, hey, if I get a class, you bet your ass I'm going to connect those dots for you. Like, you're not going to get, like, commentary free. I'm going to tell you how all this shit, like, connects to each other. Yeah. We'll MCU this bitch, and you'll know exactly why this is important. But you're right. Like, and also, if you think the education in our location was bad, and might I say, it is California public education, think about the, in my view, disgusting edits in history that places like Texas has, where Christianity is part of history, which it is, but that's it gets really overly political there, because a lot of the politicians want to they teach creationism, which is the theology of Christianity, alongside evolution in science classes. That's a separate subject, but that's part of how they influence the curriculum there. And then with history, there are some states where the Civil War, the southern states, they don't call it the Civil War. They call it the War on Northern Aggression. And it's summarized in a few pages. And we wonder why it is that a lot of Southerners lose their shit when they suggest that Confederate statues, namely in the southern states, should be torn down, or that the Confederate flag should be given the label associated with terrorism. Because that's what it did. Like, to me, and it's interesting that we're talking about all these, you see where all these issues come from, this whole Confederate flag thing. A few years ago, there was like a controversy about that, the Confederate flag, whether or not it should be taken down or not. I don't know, like, it just seems to me that every shitty person I've ever met has a Confederate flag. That can't be an accident. And like, that flag attacks people. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, I don't understand. Put your own, I guess, let's say I'm going to be charitable here. From the Southern heritage perspective, which I have issue even acknowledging because that's a heritage that was born literally out of warfare. A war that was birthed because he didn't want to let people be free. Let's be real about that. But if I'm going to go ahead and meet you halfway and tell you there, I mean, does that matter more to you than how it comes across to other groups of people? Do you not have the kind of ability to care about how this thing that you may like and how it could like offend other people the same way that a swastika is probably a painful thing for Jewish people? Maybe the same way that a black person would take great offense to somebody who has a Confederate flag, because that was the flag that wanted to keep them in chains. I mean, do you not have the capacity to give a damn about your fellow Southerners? Clearly not from a lot of, incidents that we have here. So yes, history, in particular civics, the history of our government is shit all throughout our country. That isn't an accident. I'll just say that can change if you elect the right people. And I'll tell you that I don't care for the South. I'll just put it that way. Back with 13th. It's, I think, a masterwork with all documentaries that aim to do a subject matter like this in getting you riled up and getting you emotional. Not that it's like, trying to be like an emotionally manipulative for like emotionally manipulative sake. No, it's for a point. It's for you. It really does its best to educate you and make you relate in some way to what human beings are being exposed to, that you yourself are not exposed to.
Yeah.
There's a great, I feel, list of guests that are interviewed here that bring a lot of perspective and a lot of emotion. And I think the editing is just, oh my God, the editing is beautiful, especially the transitions from era to era, accompanied with historical music that is culturally relevant to African Americans. It really, it helps to also like call this overall very concise film. Tell me overall what you made of the interviewees and the characters that we see here throughout the documentary, Alexis. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I should have clarified. So the 13th, I went broad, but in particular, it focuses heavily on mass incarceration in America, the prison industrial complex. I don't know how we went for half an hour and not mention that.
There's so many things to talk about.
But mainly it is about the fact that the African American men in particular are the most over incarcerated group of people in the country, which speaks to with police brutality and the arrests happening, and we see a whole bunch of themes all throughout here. But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, yeah, that's like the main point of it, but like I said, there's so much more to it, which is
the bigger story is how fucked up this country has been to black people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the point there.
But yeah, I mean, the people that they interviewed, I felt were great because I felt that they explained things in a way that 100% make you understand where they're coming from, and they don't necessarily like throw it in your face. They're just literally telling you this is why this is happening. This is why this is the way that it is. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, like the way that they talk and the way that they present themselves are just very like, they're very convincing, but like not like in a manipulative way. It's just they feel very genuine.
Right.
Yeah.
And most of the people are African American, and you get to see the pain in their voices. Basically, you hear the pain in their voices, and that, of course, it plays on the emotions, which come from a real place.
Yeah.
That's why it matters. I found it curious that she included a few conservative voices in here. That was an interesting part of it, and I was wondering what it was exactly that she was doing, because one of the people, and to be clear about this, for those listening, this is a documentary that takes real big shots in a nonpartisan way. It's not like, oh, it's going to be attacking the Republican Party and defending the Democratic Party. No, it throws the Democrats on the ass sheet with the Republicans pretty clearly. Like, not just like the presidents. Like, the presidents that get a lot of play here are Nixon and Reagan and Clinton, especially.
Because this isn't about them. It's about people who have been oppressed by those people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not picking sides. It's choosing their own.
It's burning the whole thing down. It's torching everybody, basically, is what's happening. Yeah.
And I like that, because it very much is relevant to today. It's because, we people mention Trump a lot, but throughout this whole thing, people have been, bringing down Obama too. So it's like, it's not about the politics. It's not about Democrats or Republicans. It's about people.
Let me just tell you one thing real quick, Alexis, not to cut you off, but this is going to play to what you're saying. I read a headline from, I want to say it was the Daily Bugle. No, it was Politico.
I thought you were going to say the Daily Bugle.
No, not that. It was Politico. It was the year 2016, and the headline was that Obama thinks Colin Kaepernick was being offensive to military families.
I saw that too.
Because he was kneeling at the national anthem. That says a lot, by the way, for those that want to say that we're like defend. No. I think Ava took the best approach here, where she torched everybody. Yeah. Really, for what happened. I mean, one of the things that gets lost in this conversation, and why I feel like many conservatives lack a certain capacity to think, because there's this thing called political realignment. Political realignment is a term that we're taught in our political studies, and that is that throughout the course of history, the Democratic Party and the Republican parties and the ideas that they have swap sides. The Democrats back in the time of Abraham Lincoln were trying to keep slavery. But here's the thing. The Democrats back then were conservative. The Republicans were progressive. So, like, okay, the names stay the names stay the same. But here we are back in the 2020s, and now the Democrats claim the mantle of progressives, and the Republicans are the conservative ones. So that's why it's idiotic to say that, well, the Republican Party freed the slaves. And then someone retweeted that, yeah, and Darth Vader was a Jedi. So it's like, I mean, it's the truth. And people don't understand that political realignment is a thing. Yeah. But we may be viewed as, by some people, as being like partisan. No, I think we're being very clear is that as mad as I am with the Republicans, I'm also pretty pissed off at the Democrats. And one of the boldest things that Ava did in this documentary was, for as much time as she was trashing Nixon and punching Reagan, she eviscerated Bill Clinton.
Oh, yeah. Even both of them.
Yeah. Both Hillary and Bill Clinton. Yeah. There was this one moment where it's like, it cuts to a debate from 2016 with Hillary and Bernie. And I was like, Bernie, you're in this. And I'm like, what's going to happen? And it's like, oh, yeah, it goes to Hillary and then it trashes her. It's like, yep. Yeah.
I even felt that she was kind of not as hard as both Clintons, but she was not so happy with Obama either. Because at one point...
Why would she
Yeah,
be?
because at one point it says, like, we have this person who looks like us in office, but they become complacent. And it just...
Yeah.
Nothing changed. Everything stayed the same. And they also mentioned that Black Lives Matter started with Obama. And, you know, it just, they just felt desperate, or they feel desperate at this point, which, you know, led up to the point that we are now.
It's let's think of the words from last week's podcast from Dr. Cornel West when he criticized the Democratic Party for focusing too much on black faces, or that we tried black faces in high places, and that didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is a lot of disappointment to go around, and at the same time, though, what I was getting at originally with the conservatives being included is I wondered what Ava was going to do with this, because one of the first conservatives that's featured in this is Newt Gingrich, who was the former Speaker of the House from the 1990s. And it was weird because he was saying, oh, yeah, we were wrong about this, and this was wrong, too. And it's like, oh, okay. I didn't know you thought that. And then there were other people who... I despise. There was this one person, Grover Norquist, who was saying him, and then this one other guy, that there was this section talking about ALEC.
Yeah. That part, I was cracking up.
Yeah, and then I realized, oh, this is why these people are in here. You're trolling them.
Yeah.
That's why they're there. Because she used, oh my god, it was beautiful how she fucking like trolled him and like cut his, like, he was saying, well, Alex's not involved in this, and like, it's not that bad. And she kept intercutting his like bullshit exchanges with like the facts and just like body slamming him basically. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
It just makes you, and again, it also serves a different purpose in that it reminds you how a lot of people like him are so out of touch. Like, he may even know, but I don't know, he may have convinced himself that that's actually not the case. So, yeah, it's impressive. I think, you know, looking at it as a whole, how much ground that it covers. It's also beautifully just executed. I think it's a great film. It's a complete recommendation for me. I'm a big fan of documentary films. And if you liked this, Alexis, I got some other movies that you haven't seen that I think you might find interesting. But it also, just to be real, was painful.
Oh, yeah.
In a way, painful to just like when it was all like said and done and it closed that, yeah, we want to say that we're in a better place than 1860. Clearly. But think how much better we would be right now if so many nefarious forces didn't get in the way. Because after, we talked about this, what the documentary covers, but in the beginning, it immediately goes after Lincoln assassinated. There was the Reconstruction era, and what happened was people began to arrest the slaves. Oh, and then there were slaves again. Then there were public lynchings, just the murdering of black people for fun. And then when that became unacceptable, which, think about that, how horrifying was it back then that people would go to a hanging for fun? Think about that, by the way. I found that fucking disgusting. And then when that became unacceptable, then they moved to poll taxes and Jim Crow and segregation. So in a two-pronged approach, they were like, you can't vote. Well, you couldn't vote anyway, I guess. But you can't be with us. Then, of course, segregation was ended with the help of Martin Luther King Jr., the Civil Rights Movement, Kennedy giving his life, Johnson passing it and signing it, and then came the Voting Rights Act, which outlawed poll taxes and Jim Crow. But then what came immediately after that? Law and Order. Law and Order by the always bitter Ms. Richard Nixon. God. And of course we see that, Trump tweets that like literally every day. I think at this point he tweets Law and Order. I think he must say Law and Order in his sleep at this point. This is how bad he wants to emulate Nixon and how he used violence to scapegoat black people and to win an election. Mm-hmm. And then that snowballed even further with Reagan. Holy fuck, Ronald Reagan. Oh my God. And then if that wasn't bad enough, we get to the 90s. And I love how Ava manages to sneak this in, that Democrats were only able to win the White House again by going back on their principles. Yeah. That's why I've always was so confused watching clips of Bill Clinton say the era of big government is over, because that's not what Democrats believe in. What? Oh yeah, so Bill Clinton, if he wasn't a Democrat, he was a Republican. But he called himself a Democrat, and he was only a little bit more liberal than the Republicans. And people hated Bush at that point anyway, so it was easy for him to win. But yeah, they were able to win back by being more corporate friendly and turning their back on civil rights and the people. And what did Bill Clinton do? The crime bill of 1994. By the way, Joe Biden helped with that, just to be clear about that. Of course, no shit. No duh, that would happen. But the nominee of our party, yet again, is one of the authors of, the crime bill and everything. The term super predators and more mass, and you start seeing just a complete lockup of mass incarceration of black men. And then on top of that comes the prison industrial complex, which, by the way, I want to add, the only presidential candidate in either 2016 or 2020 to even mention the name prison industrial complex and him swearing to get rid of it was Bernie Sanders. That's not an accident, by the way, just to be clear about that. But what is the prison industrial complex? It was these group of these private prison corporations. And it's something weirdly what I think Peter also mentioned in the previous podcast, where he said that, private prisons should be something that's outlawed because they rely on slave labor pretty much. That
was the first time I had heard of it. Peter mentioning it.
And then you seeing it for real in the documentary, how did it make you feel?
Nuts. And it's just, I don't know, it makes you just feel like disappointed.
An alien in your own world?
Yeah. And just, you know, I've always heard about people like, you know, what's the, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but just looking down on like other countries for like child labor and like all these things, but then like look at what we're doing. And we're doing it for $1. Yeah. It's just crazy. And
one of the best things that one of the clips that she included in that section was this guy who was the head of some private prison. He was like, if we keep the streets safe, you don't mind if we make $1? Which really enraged me on so many levels, because I fucking despise our profit-obsessed culture, our money-obsessed culture. You know, I find it so... I think, you know, it's fair to say, I mean, I would use a much stronger term, but I think it's fair to say contradictory and hypocritical that, you know, for a lot of us who do grow up in religious households, we're taught, in let's say Christianity, for example, or Catholicism, one of the main themes of not just the Bible, but of the entire identity of Jesus Christ was that money is the root of all evil. Greed is evil. And yet we live in a world that is obsessed with capitalism and profits and money and motivated seemingly only by greed. And a lot of these people on TV, they go, oh yeah, I'm a lifelong Christian. God bless Jesus Christ. And fuck you if you're different. Or fuck you if, you know, I hope you die and get stoned if you're not part of my ideas, and have fun in hell is how they act and everything. You just get to a point where you're at a loss of words, man. It's like, okay, everything in society is just a hypocrisy built on a lie. You know, the lies just mount up. And I can only imagine what it was like for you, Alexis, to watch this and like not know so much of this. Like, and it's eye-opening.
Yeah.
It really is. And I really do wonder what your mom would react to this if she saw this.
I know. I keep telling them to watch it, but they just keep ignoring me.
Yeah, great movie. I wish I would have seen this back in 2016, so it would have been on my top 10. That's okay. I've gone back and checked that and rearranged it. Just, yeah, this is the documentary that dreams are made of. It's perfect. And nothing else.
Honestly, like, I mean, the whole thing just like made like a huge impact on me, but that ending, literally, I like could not stop crying for like a good like 20 minutes. It was insane.
Yeah.
And like the fact that it wasn't meant to be, I mean, it was supposed to, obviously, you know, it's the ending. It's supposed to make you feel the way that they feel, but it just means so much more now.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel really, if we're going to put it in as little words as we can, which is hard for us because we talk our asses, I mean, especially me, but if we're going to put it in as little words as we can, if you truly don't understand or have the slightest idea as to why people are angry, and in particular African Americans are angry with this country, I feel that 13th beautifully puts it all out there for you to understand, watch that, and go like, oh, yeah, that's bad. I get it. I feel that this will help you get it. You know, and I know that I get I've said a lot of things that are already gonna, you know, offend conservatives, but I truly, you know, from a genuine place, even if you're not political, or maybe if, you know, maybe you think yourself as conservative from a different perspective, but you're not really into politics. If you don't get what's going on right now, you don't get the anger, watch this, and you'll understand that it's something that from both parties, both political persuasions, have contributed to the terror that it is to be an African American in this country. It's sad. And on that note, oh fuck, here we go. If that wasn't bad enough, Alexis also told me to go watch the Ava DuVernay 4-part miniseries on Netflix called When They See Us. Immediately after 13th.
Did you watch it like the next day, or did you watch it immediately after?
Well, I watched 13th late at night, so I slept and then I watched it the next night.
No, I watched it all in one sitting.
No, hell no. No, I wasn't going to do that to myself, no. And I'm glad I didn't do that because, so I watched the 4 parts in one sitting. Let's get this out of the way that the filmmaking, you know, because Ava is the writer, the director, and basically the visionary for all of this. This is the story. Okay, so this is about the 1989 controversial, I guess you can call it a rape case, even whatever. It was the Central Park 5. Alexis, do me a favor, because I don't have it in front of me. Can you get the list of the names out one more time in case I forget of all the 5 men here? Because it's important to get their names across because, and I'll tell you this because I watched the Netflix Oprah interview with Ava DuVernay and the cast after this to get some more perspective on what happened. Yeah. Oh. It's right there. And Oprah asked Ava about why this was called When They See Us and not like Central Park 5. And she was like, well, these men have been called and known as the Central Park 5, the 5 black men that were wrongly accused of raping this white girl, whose name also escapes me right now, back in 1989. And she said, I just think that's wrong because, you know, obviously they didn't do this crime. It took so long for them to be, you know, vindicated, being proven innocent after being found guilty. And I just think it's wrong to always know them as the Central Park 5 because they're human beings and they have names. And it's time to start, you know, talking about them and referring to them as their individual selves and not this name that the malicious media created for them. The media who was, as I always say, implicit or they're culpable partly for how the world especially thought about this trial. There's so much to be said, but just Alexis, can you read off the names of the 5 men here? Not the actors, but the actual men, just so I can refresh it here.
Yeah. So there is Corey Wise. Sorry, ever since I took out my tonsils, it's been weird. Corey Wise, Raymond Santana, Yusuf Salam, and Antron McCray.
McCrary, I think. Antron McCrary?
Yeah. How many is that? 4. And where's the other one? Hold on, I'm missing one.
It's funny because I'm picturing who it is that's missing, but I can't.
I know. Kevin Richardson.
So yeah, you get to see from a visionary standpoint just how important this was for Ava to do right. And can I say, look,
We're transferring here from a medium of documentary to a 4-part miniseries drama. So that's a completely different medium. And this was made for Netflix. I guess because it is a 4-part miniseries, it is more in the format of a TV show than a film, although I personally choose to see it as a really long movie. I think she was very wise, no pun intended, obviously, in using this format to tell this story. Because I don't think I would be as emotionally distraught or as affected. It would have been great as a documentary or maybe even as a 2-hour movie, but it wouldn't have been this great. I think she did a good job of deciding like the space and how to tell your story. And I think this was the most invested I would be in. Mm-hmm. You know, rather it being a documentary or like a 2-hour feature-length film. Going broad with this is some of the most deeply affecting filmmaking I've ever seen. In short, a little part of me died watching this.
100% agree. Like, I mean, I already told you, but by the end... or by the last episode, I had to cover my mouth because I couldn't stop crying, and I was like sobbing, crying really loud. I was a hot mess.
Yeah, so that's the positives. I can't think of a single negative about it. So I think it's damn near great. I mean, damn near perfect, but really just a great piece. I'm also glad that there were in 4 episodes because I needed some breaks in between. I needed a breather in between every single because if you're gonna like sit down and watch that whole thing with no breaks, oh god, just for like. I mean, no, you want to watch the next part, obviously, and see what happens next. But like, I needed like a little bit of a breather in between because each and every one of these is so. I don't know if like depressing is the right word to use, but you're watching. I mean, for as much as it is a story about these 5 teenage black men who are wrongly arrested and found guilty of a crime they didn't commit and spend years in prison and being abused by so many corrupt officials, whether it be department heads, attorneys, police officers, guards, even their own fucking family members, which really enraged me. The amount of abuse, emotional and physical abuse at these people. It also is a story ultimately about these 5 teenagers losing their innocence. Their lives just being destroyed because of acts that they didn't commit. And because ultimately why the color of their skin is why people presumed them to be guilty in the first place. And it is a story so much. I think we can begin with this. As we see the events happen in the first episode, where the district attorney, and I may be referring to her, I think she was the head of the sex crime unit. They were having a lot of rapes in New York City at that point, and they find this very, badly hurt white woman in Central Park early in the morning, and they discern that she's clearly been raped. Mm-hmm. And she's
it wasn't just that. Like it was bad. Like the thing that happened to her. Like she. Oh no! It was nuts. Like she wasn't just raped. She was found in a puddle of her own blood. Like she couldn't walk normally by the end. And something else. I think she couldn't taste stuff anymore or something.
She lost her smell, I think.
Yeah.
Her sense of smell.
Yeah, because
her vision was also badly impaired.
because they hit her in the head, like, really badly.
Yeah.
Like, brain damage was, like, a problem.
And what happened to her was horrible and a tragedy. And I didn't mean to imply that she herself was, I guess, turning... I think of all the people who contributed to these 5 boys getting imprisoned, I would blame her the least.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, if at all, because, I mean, this was done to her, and I think she was brought in as a witness in the later episode. But she didn't really... I mean, her testimony just was, I can't remember anything. That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
So it's... The prosecution used that against them. But like I would think to myself, if I was like a member of the jury, okay, but what does that testimony do to convince me that these 5 black boys did it?
It just sucked because it sucked because she was just used to make them look bad.
Yeah, she was a prop, which is what, witnesses are, and that's how it played out. So, but yeah, not to minimize what happened to her. It was awful what happened. But immediately the department, or Linda, who was the head of sex crimes, was immediately like running circles, spinning wheels, and she told all her officers to get these boys to admit it. And they went through over 12 hours of aggressive interrogation, breaking the law. They were minors that didn't have their parents or a guardian present, and they were beating them and pressuring them and yelling at them, basically to confess to a crime they didn't commit. And they use, promises, which again are illegal, of getting them out of there by just getting them to tell them how things happen. And it was even... It got so bad watching this to where it's like I wanted to throw things at the TV because the cops were literally telling them what to say. Like they were putting ideas in their minds about how they can make this shit happen. And like throughout this entire thing, like Linda doesn't... What I think is the cops don't care, I think, one way or the other, if they're the ones who did it or not. Yeah. It just seemed weird to me that, like, the minute that they were, like, unleashed to, like, terrorize these kids, they went all in on it, and they were kind of happy to do that, it looked like. I don't know if Linda was, like, doing this because she felt that she needed to throw some people under the bus and incarcerate them. I think most people would say that's what she was doing, but never in the viewing of this film did I get the impression that she was... Well, I don't even know if I can say it. It's like, I feel like by the last time we see her in this, in the very end of it, I think she like convinced herself.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That was like, she just convinced herself that they were guilty no matter what. Yeah. Now that says a lot of different things, but like that's different than like knowing that they're innocent but still going after them anyway. It was like this, I don't know, psychic tear that happened in her mind that just like went into this, and they were beginning to do a timeline of the crime scene. And just from the very beginning, you can just tell, even though like the film shows us that they were nowhere near it, even the scenes that show them like spinning like the cycle and looking at like the timeline about when they were around or were not around, nothing added up. No. Literally nothing added up. The dots were not connecting at all.
And the thing that like bugs me so much is that they literally did no investigation. Like they just saw these group of kids, they got them, and just said, yep, these are it. Because at the time, which we do find out later, there was a series of crimes that were happening that were very much like
the same thing.
Yeah.
It was a pattern of crimes that were the same.
Yeah. And that's insane. And it's not like they decided it in like a few days. No, they decided in that moment that they were it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Go in a little bit more, Alexis. Just some things you want to talk about with this. Whether if you want to go like individual moments or overall. And this could be any of the episodes. It's just stuff you want to bring up.
I mean, we could start just overall, because, yeah. This is so much.
Yeah. We're so with, the performances all across the board are great. And in particular, the child performances, or the young adult, I guess you could say, performances of Antron and Yusuf, Raymond, Corey, and Kevin. Oh, God, they rip your heart out. They rip your heart out so many ways. You just feel so unbelievably terrible for them. I mean, all of what is happening to them is, it'd be, I think, a little too nice to say it was an injustice. It was far more than that. It was just damn near evil and despicable what occurred and what they went through. But it was just downright torture.
Mm-hmm.
Because their whole lives just went up in smoke, and their families, and all of the scenes with them dealing with all of it, it was hard to watch.
It was.
I'm not gonna lie. It was just hard to watch. There were so many times I just wanted to turn it off because I couldn't take it. I just couldn't take it. In particular, though, the actor that played Corey Wise, because he was the only one that was both playing him as a teenager and as an adult. Now, one of the things that's I want to start off with him because he has in fairness, a different story than the rest.
Yeah.
And the real life Corey Wise, or I think it was actually Raymond Santana that said this to Ava when they were developing this story. I got this from the Oprah interview. And he said, you need to be aware that what Corey went through is a separate thing all in and of itself. And his story needs to be told too. That's separate from what we were. Because the rest of us, we were together for the beginning of this. When Corey was off by himself the entirety of this entire situation. And so early on, the decision was made to go ahead and honor that and do that. And I think for the storytelling that we got, I think it paid off in spades. It really did. Especially for this actor who played Corey Wise. Look, the performance was just great. I mean, all of them were, but this was, in ways, maybe the hardest stuff to watch.
Oh, yeah.
And this mostly happened in I think it was episode 4
mm-hmm.
of this. And we got to see all of the time that we missed with Corey Wise. And it was painful. You get to see him being abused by the guards in the prison, transferring from prison to prison, not really going anywhere. I'll tell you what did put a smile on my face is finally, in this 4-part series, we come across a decent human being. And that was the guard that was being nice to him and calling him kid. I mean, it just made me so sad that that's not what's common.
Yeah.
That's what all guards and police officers should be, not these corrupt thugs that are being displayed in the other parts of this series, but just this genuine, display of kindness was sorely missing from any of the other people around this, this event that we're watching. And it was good to see him be treated like a person again, especially knowing that we know that he's innocent and everybody else beat the crap out of him, quite literally.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course he transferred to another location, which was bad. But yeah, that whole situation was...
Yeah. No, it just... Well, like you said, the performance was amazing, but watching it and just the emotions that you feel watching it, it's really hard.
And it does a lot for also we get a lot of really interesting background on Corey's life before this tragedy occurred, with, getting mixed up. Like, one of the things, and they stressed this so much, and I'm glad they did, is Corey wasn't picked up. He wasn't supposed to be there. He went with his friend Yusuf to look out for him. And yet, arguably, he may have been the one to have suffered the most. I think he did serve the longest prison time because he refused to say that he was guilty. And he wasn't supposed to be there.
And, I think that the thing that, gets me the most with him is just, how much hope he has.
Yeah.
All throughout, these terrible things are happening to him. But yeah, he never admits to doing any of it. But with the transfer, all he wanted was his mom to go see him.
Yeah,
and he even
time.
says and the cop or I don't know what the heck, the prison guard who he talks to and asks about being transferred, he tells them you can either be moved somewhere else, or you can be moved somewhere closer, or you're gonna be moved further. And he literally says, the worst has already happened to me. There's no way that it could get any worse. And
yeah, but it did.
It did.
Understand this is difficult to talk about and recall because this was such a painful experience. I mean, just a viewing experience. It is visceral as it is emotional as it is painful in every sense of the word. There is no mistaking that at all. And, with sticking with Corey, is we get a lot of wonderful moments with him having, flashbacks and discussions with those that were important to him, with not just the guard, obviously, but with his then girlfriend, and just imagining a day of taking her to Coney Island. What would have happened if he had stayed with her in that moment instead of going to the park that night. And then we see him and his mom, and also with his older brother, who I believe is appropriate to qualify as trans.
Yeah.
Correct. I'm sorry if the pronouns aren't correct there, but yeah, and how deeply he loved her. He loved and the fact that I don't think she never came to visit. And she died. She was killed brutally. And I mean, of course, it being the time, I think it was late 80s, early 90s, just horrific what happened to her and how people were giving her these nasty looks in public, with Corey next to her. And it was, yeah. And then, of course, there was, we get a little bit of insight into how the sister and the mom would literally go at each other. Holy fuck, that was an explosion. And then after she died, there was this, I think this one time where I think that was the last time we see her go and visit him, where she just feels so lost as a person going through all. I think the thing with Corey's mom is that she was into drugs, and she was, I think, doing that to make some money, right? And that through the course of the whole journey, she, as she says, found God and was able to feel better about herself and admitting all the things that she did wrong. But yeah, very painful story, deeply layered, and that's not, of course, to diminish what the others went through, but we literally see Corey in prison. The others we only see, I think, at the beginning and at the end. And when the others come into play with Raymond and Antron and Yusuf and Kevin, and especially with, I think, Raymond, Raymond had it the worst. So we see them all get out. Mm-hmm. After however many years, and they come out at different points. I guess I should have expected it, but, you'd think that after all of the terror, the abuse that you've been put through, you'd think you could at least think that your family would understand and believe that you were at the very least not guilty of that disgusting crime. And you think that you'd be welcomed back with open arms. But the situation that Raymond walked into was... I mean, talk about that, because I get really mad just watching what happened with him and then his dad's new wife and all of that.
I mean, there's a lot of things that happen. You get home and you think that, like, obviously, he knows that what happened to him shouldn't have happened to him, and he thinks coming home, it's gonna be, it has to be better than how it was. Like, it has to be, and that's not what happened.
You think the worst is behind you.
Yeah. And you get out and you realize, oh wait, but all these other people believe that I did this thing. And like you said, I mean, because I wouldn't say it was his family, because that
it's his dad's family.
But that lady's not his family.
No.
Yeah. And it just, and then, like, just the fact that, like, his dad isn't there for him, and he doesn't, like, he is there for him, but he doesn't stand up for him, and he doesn't do what he needs to do to be supportive, and he doesn't have that. And then you also have the other aspect of when you get out, you have all these things going against you. They have to register as sex offenders. They have to do certain things for the rest of their lives. They can't, at one point, I think one of them realizes that they can't get a degree. There's just so many things going against you, and it doesn't go away. Like, it just, the bad still continues.
It reminds you that another hypocrisy in our society, right? When you go away, when you get locked up, you forfeit all your rights. You're a prisoner. But when you do your time, and when you come back, I thought that was okay. You paid your debt to society. But the system actively works against that notion. People are not going to look at your application if you're a sex offender. They don't want you around. All of the different institutions are going to keep you out of as many places as possible because of who you are and what you did, which goes against the notion of paying your debt to society. And we're not just, I mean, that's a larger issue, but you see how it affects especially Raymond.
Yeah.
And all of that. And I hated the lady that his father married and everything. Like, she was just so rude on every level. And it's like, I don't know what was wrong with the dad that they couldn't, I guess there was just no dialogue at all, but like, clearly that kind of person wasn't going to be okay having his son around. Clearly. And at every moment, like, she was like attacking him, criticizing him, yelling at him. Like, at one point, like, they attack him for like serving himself a plate of food. And they walk in on him, you know, being intimate with a girl as if it's their fucking business. And it's like, God, like, hasn't he been through enough with you having to be on his ass like that? Yeah, I don't know. It was a fucked up situation.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just like, and honestly, we see also moments with like Yusuf and Antron going back to their families and just seeing how much things have changed. Like, who are you got the impression, like, who are these people? What am I doing here? You see Yusuf just feel so uncomfortable. Just sitting there in the living room where everybody else is like celebrating. That's like, this just feels bad. And like, you think that you're going to get back to your life when all this is over. But in some ways, watching these men try and readjust back to what life was before is even more painful because of how you're reminded literally by watching all of these things happen in your face, everything they've lost and maybe what they'll never get back.
Yeah.
And then with the whole situation with Antron and his dying father was that's some. What do you make of the whole situation? Because we didn't mention Antron's father, and because Antron's father is, he's the one that convinced Antron to sign the forfeiting of a lawyer so they can go home that night. Then of course they bring him back the next day.
Yeah.
Then he testifies on the stand, and he kind of like makes himself and Antron. Yeah, it fucks it up basically, and then years and years later, he's dying, and he wants to make amends. Yeah. But Antron, and I think even the real life Antron in the interview with Oprah said, I hate him. I hate him.
Dang.
He's a bad man. He's a coward. So.
Yeah. And we do get to see, like, two situations where the family members just feel so guilty because, you know, they were part of it. Like, not like part of, like, but they
no.
With Kevin, for example, his sister walks in on him, and the people who are interrogating him, and they're writing down what he supposedly said happened, but obviously it did not happen. Like, the cops made him say all of that, and the sister's like, no, like, we're not signing this. His confession, I guess. But he just wants to go home, and she sees how desperate he is, and she says okay, and you see her later on when he's in jail saying like, you're in here because of me. Ugh, I hate that.
I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, she was right not to sign that piece of shit paper. Not that, like, again, knocking the situation, not to knock the person, but if I were in a situation like that, I would run away. I'm not signing shit. No, I'm not giving you what you want. And it's like, I mean, because like ultimately, like, it didn't mean anything, because then he would be in jail for the rest of, not his life, but the rest of, like, I don't know how many years he was in prison. But yeah, the guilt all over. And I hated that other exchange back on Raymond's Family when, like, his father's brother was blaming him.
Oh, yeah.
For like, how, like, their mom just being sad about what happened. And, like, I really hate the kind of, like, shitty fighting that goes on with families like that. Like, how can you be that fucked up to your family like that?
Yeah.
It was, and probably killed her. I don't know. We never saw her again after that. So
no, that was really bad. It just gets you mad, and it gets you mad because this actually happened, and it gets you mad because, at least with me, this is something that might happen with, like, my family. You know what I mean? Like,
that it could happen.
Yeah, and
like, if it happened, that's how it would play out, you mean?
Yeah. I feel. I don't know. Maybe not.
Okay.
But, you know what? I don't know. Like, the possibility of that happening with you, or just putting yourself in that situation. It's very real. And then, the part where they're, I don't know if it was, like, right before they got convicted or right after. I want to say it's before, when they all, like, get together and just, like, hug each other because they're just scared of what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And also, none of them knew each other.
Yeah, they really didn't know who the hell each other were. No.
They
Except
go
for, like,
into
Yusuf and Corey.
Yeah, they go into a room right after they were interrogated, and they're all giving each other their names because they don't know each other, and they confess to each other, "Hey, I said it was you," and the other one going, "Well, I said it was you." It's crazy.
Yeah, it was, and it felt good though to. Obviously, this is one of those occasions where it does have a happy ending, and they are exonerated for all their crimes because it is discovered that the real person who did all this confessed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what else I can say. It's just, I mean, I do encourage all of you to watch this, but it's just, I'm finding it's even difficult to say much about it because it's just so deeply moving, affecting, and you go through a range of emotions with this. It's a lot, but I will say it is a phenomenal piece of filmmaking and storytelling, and I am so impressed with Ava DuVernay. I really am. Everything that she wanted to say was said with this. And I'm excited for what she has in store next.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've said all I wanted to say. Alexis, anything you want to add to your experience with this?
No, you said it. Just everybody should watch this. Both of them.
Yeah. It won't make for any kind of easy watching,
No.
of course, but in some ways it's very necessary to, and it's very timely with, what's happening in our world today. And it is, just happens to be great cinema all around, so there's the added benefit of that. But with that, thank you, Alexis, for being here, and thank you all who have stayed and listened to us. We appreciate you hearing our thoughts, especially when it comes to these very, very political topics. But we just being ourselves, we're being real with you and telling you what we think based on what we've, been watching and everything, and we appreciate you all for that. Reminder that we have moved from Wooshka to Castbox.fm. That's our new RSS feed. If you're listening to us on iTunes, Apple, or Spotify, the new feeds should be up. If they've disappeared, look them up again and they'll be right there. We have weekly episodes based on recaps for Avatar: The Last Airbender. We have weekly shows on the newest episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. To the Table is going to come back with a Tron-themed month. And of course, we're winding down our Movies That Left a Lasting Impression on Us series with Kyle and myself left to go. We've got much more content coming your way. Stay tuned here under the spotlight. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.